Welcome to your favorite channel, the place where reality TV's hidden truths are revealed layer by layer. Tonight's story is not just about love. It is about sacrifice, betrayal, and a decision that changed everything. For years, fans of 90 Day Fiancé believed they understood the love story of Jenny Slatin and Sumit Singh. Their cross-cultural relationship survived an age gap, secrets, and public judgment. But what cameras did not fully show was the silent battle happening inside their home. It was not just tension. It was a war between a wife and a mother. A war that forced a man to choose between the woman he loved and the family who raised him. False accusations were made. A mother gave an ultimatum. And a choice so extreme was placed on the table that it ended their life in India forever. This is the story of how Jenny Slatin and Sumit Singh lost everything they built, walked away from 90 Day Fiancé, and disappeared from the life the world once knew, searching for peace far away. The conflict began with one accusation. Sumit's mother claimed that Jenny had misbehaved and even assaulted her when Sumit was not home. The accusation was shocking. Not only was it false, but it attacked the very thing Jenny had been fighting for: acceptance. For years, Jenny had endured criticism and rejection from Sumit's family. She was judged for her age, her nationality, and her presence in their son's life. But she stayed patient. She tried to show kindness, even when it was not returned. Now, she was being called violent and disrespectful. Jenny was heartbroken. The accusation felt like a direct attempt to destroy her marriage. She knew it was meant to push Sumit into choosing his family over her. Sumit was trapped in the middle. He knew Jenny would never harm his mother. He knew her character. But in Indian culture, a mother's words carry powerful weight. To question her is seen as betrayal. To defend his wife meant standing against tradition. The accusation spread quickly among relatives and neighbors. Gossip grew. Jenny felt isolated and judged. Sumit felt pressure from every direction. What began as tension became open conflict. Then came the ultimatum. In front of relatives and family friends, Sumit's mother looked at him and said, "If you do not divorce Jenny, you are no longer my son. I will not accept you as my child." The words were brutal. For Sumit, it felt like losing the ground beneath his feet. In his culture, family is sacred. A mother's blessing is everything. To be disowned is not just emotional pain. It means losing identity, community, and belonging. Jenny stood still, trying to remain strong. She had fought for this marriage for years. But this was different. This was exile. She was being blamed as the woman who stole a son from his mother. Sumit's father stayed mostly silent, his face heavy with disappointment. Relatives whispered. Some supported the mother. Others felt the ultimatum was too harsh, but did not dare speak against tradition. Sumit felt torn apart. He loved his mother deeply, but he also loved Jenny. Choosing one meant losing the other. At night, he could not sleep. The words repeated in his mind. "You are no longer my son." The idea of losing his family filled him with fear. But the thought of leaving Jenny felt impossible. She had stood by him through lies, secrets, and public criticism. She had given up her life in America to be with him. Jenny watched him struggle. She saw the guilt and confusion in his eyes. She tried to comfort him, reminding him of everything they had survived together. But this situation felt heavier than anything before. Friends offered advice, but none of it brought peace. Some told Sumit to obey his mother. Others quietly supported his marriage, but refused to challenge family expectations. Sumit felt alone. Days passed in silence. The tension inside their home grew unbearable. Every conversation felt fragile. Every decision felt final. Jenny began to realize something painful. Even if Sumit chose her, the damage might never heal. Living in constant conflict with his family would destroy them both. She did not want to be the reason he lost his parents. At the same time, she could not accept being treated as an enemy forever. The accusation, the gossip, and the ultimatum had changed everything. Sumit finally understood that staying in India meant constant war. Even if his mother accepted them publicly, the resentment would remain. The peace they wanted would never exist under the same roof of family pressure. One evening, after hours of quiet reflection, Sumit made a decision. He chose Jenny, but that choice came with a cost. He knew that by standing with his wife, he might lose his mother's acceptance forever. He might be seen as the son who betrayed tradition. Jenny did not celebrate the decision. She understood the pain behind it. There were no cheers, only tears. The couple realized they could not continue living surrounded by hostility. The environment was too toxic, the judgment too constant. So they made another choice. They would leave, not just the house, not just the neighborhood, India. They decided to step away from the life they had built there. They would walk away from public appearances, from constant family tension, and from the spotlight of reality television. Leaving meant losing property. It meant giving up comfort. It meant starting over again, this time far from cameras and conflict. But it also meant peace. The departure was quiet. No dramatic farewell. No final public argument. Just two people choosing love over approval. For Sumit, it meant accepting that reconciliation with his mother might never happen. For Jenny, it meant finally escaping the feeling of being unwanted. Fans were confused when they slowly disappeared from public attention. Rumors spread. Speculation grew. But the truth was simple. They were tired. Tired of defending their love. Tired of fighting tradition. Tired of living in a battlefield disguised as a home. Their story is not one of perfect victory. It is one of sacrifice. Sumit lost the comfort of full family acceptance. Jenny lost the dream of being embraced as a daughter-in-law. But together, they chose a different kind of life. One where love did not have to compete with loyalty. One where peace mattered more than pride. In the end, the cameras captured only part of their journey. The real battle happened in silence, behind closed doors, inside hearts that were pulled in opposite directions. Love survived, but it came at a cost. And sometimes, choosing love means walking away from everything else. Though strong, Jenny carried deep pain. She knew she was being blamed unfairly and accused of things she had never done. But more than that, she feared losing Sumit to the pressure from his family. She had crossed oceans for him. She had built a life in India and endured rejection again and again. To lose him now would destroy her. The tension finally reached a breaking point. Sumit understood that no matter what he chose, someone would suffer. His mother's ultimatum forced him into an impossible position. The weight of the decision felt like it would crush him. Love and loyalty had collided, and he was left with only one path forward: to choose freedom, even if it meant leaving everything behind. The days after the ultimatum were even worse. The family feud, once quiet and those words followed them everywhere. Even when they were alone, the pressure did not disappear. Jenny felt trapped. She had sacrificed everything to be with Sumit. She had fought for acceptance and tried to show love and respect. But no matter what she did, she was treated like the enemy. The false accusation had already damaged her reputation. Now the ultimatum threatened to end her marriage completely. Sumit was falling apart under the stress. He loved Jenny deeply, but the guilt of going against his mother ate away at him. He tried to reason with her. He begged for understanding, but every conversation ended in rejection. He stopped sleeping properly. He felt anxious and hopeless. They slowly realized something painful. This was not a temporary problem. It would not go away with time. The conflict was permanent. Jenny would never truly be accepted. Sumit's loyalty would always be questioned. Staying meant living in constant battle. One evening, after another heated confrontation, they sat together in silence. The room felt heavy. The stress had drained them both. But in that quiet moment, something became clear. They could not live like this anymore. The arguments, the accusations, the constant pressure, it was destroying them. Sumit finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "We have to leave. If we stay, we will never have peace." Jenny looked at him, tears in her eyes, and nodded. She knew he was right. Their love had survived so much, but now they had to protect it. The breaking point had arrived. They began to talk seriously about leaving India. It was not an easy idea. India was Sumit's home. His memories, culture, and family were there. For Jenny, it was the country she had chosen out of love. But staying meant endless pain. Slowly, the idea of starting over somewhere new began to feel hopeful. Australia became their choice. It was far away from the conflict, a place where they could live without judgment or interference, a place where they could simply be husband and wife. The decision hurt, but it also felt freeing. They understood that love sometimes requires sacrifice, not sacrifice of each other, but sacrifice of the things that threaten to tear you apart. That night, they made a promise. They would sell everything and start again. The house, the belongings, the life they had built in India. It would all be left behind. Once the decision was made, there was no turning back. To leave India, they had to cut all ties, emotionally and financially. The house they shared had once been a symbol of their love and strength. Now it represented stress and conflict. Selling it would give them the money to begin again. Sumit contacted real estate agents and explained that they wanted to sell quickly. Potential buyers came to view the home, unaware of the emotional story behind the sale. For Jenny, watching strangers walk through the rooms was painful. Every corner held memories, happy moments, painful arguments, and dreams for the future. But she knew those memories could not protect them anymore. The house no longer felt safe. After weeks of negotiation, the property sold for $1.2 million. The amount surprised them. It gave them financial security and hope. With that money, they could truly start fresh. After the house sale, they began selling everything else. Furniture, vehicles, decorations, personal items. Some things were sold. Others were donated. They decided not to keep much. They wanted a clean break. Each item packed into a box felt like closing a chapter. Jenny cried quietly as she sorted through their belongings. She was not just leaving a house. She was leaving years of struggle and sacrifice. Sumit stayed strong on the outside, but inside he felt the pain of leaving his homeland. He knew leaving meant distance from his parents. It meant accepting that reconciliation might never happen. But he also knew staying would slowly destroy his marriage. As the house emptied, so did the tension that once filled it. With the money secured and their possessions gone, they felt something unexpected. Relief. The feud had taken enough from them. Now, they were taking control of their future. Their departure would not be dramatic. There would be no public goodbye. Just two people choosing peace over conflict. They understood that starting over would not be easy. A new country meant new challenges, but at least those challenges would belong to them, not to family pressure or endless arguments. In the end, they did not leave because they stopped loving their family. They left because they wanted to save their marriage. Sometimes, choosing love means walking away from everything familiar. And for Jenny and Sumit, that choice changed their lives forever. Jenny and Sumit's preparations for leaving India were quiet but intense. Each day felt heavier than the last, yet also filled with a strange sense of hope. They knew that once they left, there would be no going back. Their lives, as they had known them, would be completely different. They began packing the things that could travel with them. Suitcases were stacked in the corner, carefully labeled. Clothes, documents, and essentials were organized with precision. Every small item carried meaning. Yet they tried not to dwell on what they were leaving behind. Memories were stored in their hearts, not in boxes. The departure date drew near, and a sense of finality set in. Friends who had supported them tried to offer comfort, but even they understood that this was a choice Jenny and Sumit had to make alone. The support from loved ones was emotional, but the practical reality was daunting. Moving halfway across the world meant finding a new home, securing jobs, and navigating a culture different from the one Sumit had grown up in. Jenny, though exhausted and emotionally drained, began to feel a spark of excitement. Australia promised a fresh start. She imagined waking up in a home where they could live without fear of judgment, where they could finally enjoy simple pleasures, a morning coffee together, a quiet evening walk, or a weekend spent exploring nature, without the constant tension from family gossip or ultimatums. Sumit, meanwhile, carried the heavier burden. The idea of leaving his mother and the life he had known was unbearable in some ways, but his love for Jenny gave him strength. Every time he looked at her, he was reminded why they had chosen this path. He also understood that running away was not cowardice. It was a brave act of love, choosing a life together over endless conflict. In the final days before departure, they visited places that had been significant to their life in India. The local market where they had shopped together, the small temple where they had quietly prayed for peace, even the streets where they had argued and reconciled. Each visit was bittersweet, a farewell to the life they had built, a recognition of the sacrifices they had made. The night before leaving, they shared a quiet dinner at home. There were no arguments, no tension. Just two people sitting together, holding hands, and silently acknowledging the gravity of the decision they had made. Jenny looked at Sumit and whispered, "We're going to be okay. We will build a life where no one can hurt us like this again." Sumit smiled, tears glistening in his eyes. "Yes," he said softly. "We'll make it work. Together." The next morning, they loaded their luggage into the car. Their house, now empty, stood silent behind them. They glanced back once more, knowing this was the last time they would see it. Then, without looking back again, they drove to the airport. Every mile brought them closer to freedom and further from the life that had caused them so much pain. The flight was long, filled with quiet reflection. Jenny stared out the window, watching the clouds drift by, imagining the life that awaited them. Sumit sat beside her, holding her hand tightly as if drawing strength from their connection. They did not speak much, but the silence was not uncomfortable. It was shared understanding, a bond reinforced by the trials they had endured together. Upon arriving in Australia, they were met with a strange mix of relief and uncertainty. Everything was different, the sights, the sounds, the people. Yet, this unfamiliarity was also liberating. It was a blank canvas. No one knew their story here. There were no family disputes, no gossiping neighbors, no ultimatums. For the first time in years, they could breathe freely. They quickly found a small apartment that suited their needs. It was modest, but it felt like home. The walls were bare, but that emptiness felt promising. Jenny began unpacking their essentials while Sumit handled logistics like bank accounts, phone numbers, and transport. It was exhausting work, but each task carried a sense of accomplishment. Even simple things felt meaningful now. Grocery shopping together became an adventure. Walking through parks hand in hand felt like a victory. Each small moment was a reminder that they had chosen life, love, and freedom over endless conflict. Jenny and Sumit also began looking for work. Sumit found a position in a local company, something that allowed him to use his skills while learning about a new business environment. Jenny, who had experience in several fields, explored opportunities that aligned with her interests. The process was challenging, but it gave them a sense of purpose. They were not just survivors of conflict, they were builders of a new life. At night, when the apartment was quiet, they would sit together and talk about the future. Plans for travel, hobbies, and even a family one day. Everything felt possible now. They reflected on their time in India, acknowledging both the pain and the lessons learned. The struggle had been immense, but it had also strengthened them. Friends from Australia began to notice the transformation. Jenny and Sumit carried themselves differently, calmer, more focused, and closer than ever. Their story, though unknown to many, became a quiet inspiration to those who met them. It was proof that love could survive tremendous obstacles, and that sometimes walking away was the bravest choice of all. Months passed. The initial chaos of moving and settling in gradually eased. They decorated their apartment, made friends, and slowly built a life filled with routine and comfort. The shadows of the past still lingered occasionally, especially in quiet moments of reflection. But the tension and fear were gone. They were no longer at the mercy of ultimatums or accusations. They were free to live their marriage on their own terms. Jenny and Sumit also began to share their story carefully and selectively, not as a spectacle, but as a testament to resilience. They spoke of love tested by adversity, of loyalty strained by cultural expectations, and of the courage it takes to choose happiness over obligation. Their message resonated with many who had faced similar conflicts in their own lives. While the distance from family was painful, it was also protective. They were able to grow together without interference. Conversations were no longer fraught with tension. Arguments were less frequent, and when they occurred, they were about life and choices, not ultimatums or false accusations. Jenny found new ways to express herself and build community in Australia. She volunteered, took classes, and made connections with people who valued her for who she was, not who she married. Sumit also thrived professionally, gaining confidence and independence in a new environment. Together, they planned for the long term. Financial stability, emotional well-being, and personal growth became their shared goals. They discussed the possibility of starting a family someday, now in a place where they could make that choice freely. Even though India and the past were behind them, the couple kept in mind the lessons learned. They were cautious with trust, mindful of boundaries, and committed to communicating openly. The feud had taught them that love without respect and peace could not survive. In the quiet moments, Jenny and Sumit would